guys, so today we're going to be looking at tonal value, which is what we were looking at previously, and we are going to use this, which is a Canson Me Taints touch paper, so it's quite a fine sanded paper. What I've got in my hand is a bit pastel from Pastel. I just use this to mark up where I kind of want things. Once I've done that, we'll then get the watercolours out and we will do our tonal value underpainting, just so that we can see exactly where we want to put our lightest lights and our darkest darks, and then our mid-tones in between to give us the sense of depth before we start laying our pastel down. So I'm just going to go straight ahead and get the rough pencil sketch in. If you wondered about the shape of the paper, I've actually just drawn around the inside of a mount from an old picture frame. I buy most of my picture frames from auction houses and charity shops, so I upcycle them, I do them up, and then use them for my paintings. Of course, most of those come with mounts already in, so rather than waste money on wasting a perfectly good mount, I'd rather reuse it, which means that I would need to be painting to the size, the internal dimensions of the mount. The easiest way to do that is to get the mount, lay it on your pastel paper, and draw around the inside, and then you've got a good idea. You can just see very faint lines here, which is actually the internal dimensions of the mount, and obviously the borderline paper. If you're wondering what this is washi tape, which I use to tape down. It's less sticky and less tacky than like sellotape or masking tape. So actually it's really good for using to stick down your pastel paper, because it's less likely to rip your paper when you take it off. In the case of this roll, this says, enjoy the little things. So let's get started. Here we've got pretty much our horizon line. It's quite high up, so there's a fair bit to this. This is a picture of a marshland. There's quite a few bits and pieces of marsh and some boggy areas. We don't want too much sky. I want more marsh than sky in this painting. Behind there, from where we are in Perthshire, we've got quite a lot of mountains and hills. The marshes themselves, this one in particular, is at a place called Corbinick Camp Hill House. It's a special retreat for those with severe and special learning disabilities. It's an absolute beautiful place to go. It must be an amazing place to stay and live. They have a working farm, arts workshops, crafts workshops. They make their own pottery, they make their own wooden sculptures, bird boxes, and as part of the site they have about a 2.5 kilometre poetry walk. Around that walk is various poetry sculptures, and it is absolutely stunning. And the walk itself goes through multiple different terrains, including this section of marshy, boggy area, which is actually at the top of the hill. So in Perthshire, where you get a lot of the more kind of mountainous hills, you tend to get dips between each of the hills. They don't form a valley, they're just a dip before the next hill and the next mountain peak, and you tend to find that land there tends to be really boggy. So this was a photo that my husband took of some of the kind of marshland area from there. So in the distance we've got some mountains, so I'm just going to kind of loosely pencil them in. Not really that much to look at, to be honest. And then slightly closer than that, in fact considerably closer than that, there was a number of trees and bushes. So I'm just going to pencil those in here. They came down past the horizon because they were actually closer. And they're just kind of obscuring things a bit. And then we've got this. You can see where the animals have been kind of making their way through the marshes, because they've created this almost watercourse through the marshes. So I'm gonna try and put that in. I want it kind of coming from this direction, and then bending, and then coming back. And this way it will lead you through the painting. And it kind of widens out to this pond, which is where we took this picture. There was this little pier that you could obviously use. It was probably specifically for taking photos. So I'll bring that down here a bit, and then I'll kind of zigzag you off. that, so that and it kind of disappears. It gets really faint and kind of it does zigzag an awful lot. So if you hear any strange noises, I've given the kitten a sheet of tinfoil, which she's currently stalking and jumping on. So the crinkly noises in the background, they are her, basically. So that's what we kind of want is our basic. What you're seeing here, this line here, is just where the water in the distance is catching the light. You can see that more than you can actually see the ground, because of course it's highly reflective. There was also some kind of further trees here. It's kind of like a small one, and then a kind of weird shaped one there. Now they were in the distance, so they are on the horizon line. And these here, that's our mountain line. So this is the layout we've got going. It's nothing complicated. So we've got basically, if you look at it in thirds, so you've got your top third is your horizon line to your sky, and then your middle third is your middle ground. So it's the part that pushes it into the distance and forces your eye to lead through the zigzag kind of path of the water to the focal point, which is the trees and the mountain in the distance. And then you've got your absolute foreground third, which is this part down to here, which is basically the open water of the pond. So most of that will be reflected from the sky, and also reflected of the reeds and marsh, kind of mud and reeds that were at the edges. So they would be here and here, and then obviously the majority of light sky and reflection here. So now we are going to go and put our watercolour wash on and have a look at our tonal values. So I've got a little plate on the side with some of my watercolours on, and we are going to be using Dioxazine Violet. We've also got Ultramarine, which is a blue. We have Cadmium Red, which is always one of my favourites, and we also have a little bit of burnt sienna as well. Now I'm going to start with my darkest tones on here, and also the darkest colour, and also the one that has the most, the darker in value basically. And in this case you'd be surprised, but actually it's the violet. So we're going to look at this and basically see where we're going with this. Now we know that the trees in the background are quite dark. They're not, they're not super light. So there is a large level of darkness to them, but they're also further away. So the last thing we want to do is make them so dark that they look like they're in the foreground, because then we lose our perspective. So, what is our darkest colours? Let's get started. If you wonder, there's my little plate. There's the purple. Try not to let it run because it gets everywhere. I've got blue, and then at the top I've got cadmium red, and to the side the burnt sienna. So I'm going to apply some of this. Now these trees are dark, so we are going to apply a dark colour to them, but we will lighten that up when we put the pastel over the top. It's just a good way for us to know that it is, when you do a tonal sketch, that it is one of the darker colours that you've got. The brush I am using, I'm just going to hold that up for you to see. This is a flat chisel head water brush by Arteza. This is not the biggest one, this is the second biggest one. I got a set of 6, that was a birthday present from my parents, and these are absolutely amazing. Cannot stress enough how wonderful they are. This section here, which is where the valve is absolutely amazing. It works amazingly. So we are just going to slap this on. Here. You don't have to be very neat. That's kind of not really the point of this. You can see that I'm not sure why. I think it's just something to do with the coating, that Canson puts on their papers, but you can see it's almost slightly resisting the water, but actually it's quite a nice effect. So, you know, we'll stick with that because it's, you know, is an effect we want after all. Right, and then we've got these in the background. And just slap that on. Note, if it runs, like starts running down the page, that is not a problem. Remember, you're painting over it with pastel, so it's going to make absolutely no difference whatsoever. Right. So as we come further towards, we have a slight darkish line, and this darkish line actually follows the line of the river. So where the watercourse runs through the marsh, you can actually see that it's darker at the edges as it comes towards us. So we're probably going to just stick some of this here. And also, yeah, so also trying to see which side we really want to be putting on. We'll put it on that side. So we kind of need to go, it's dark on this side as it comes down. So across that. And then it is getting quite dark here. Now we've got our next bend. And we're just going to scrub that in. Now, to be fair though, it is dark on both sides of this, and that's probably because that the sun at this time of day was quite high, so it was creating a lot of shadow underneath the marsh grasses on this side. So I'm going to add some along here as well, show that this is where this was, and just slightly off that way. So obviously there is a bend there. Mixing up a little bit more of this with some blue, and we're going to make a slightly lighter tone. You'll see that this is where our mids are going to fall. Ultramarine is quite a strong colour, so you'll be very careful how much of this you want to use. Now, funnily enough, we have a mid-tone in our mountains, because our mountains are not lighter than the sky is lighter than the mountain. So we're going to put this in here, and this will be our mid-tone. And that's our mountain range. And then we've got most of this. Most of the grass, the marsh grass, is mid-tone. Now, when you're doing this, do not worry if you go over where you want to put the river, because you're painting over this in pastel, so mistakes are permitted. You can see here where it's pulling some of this purple down, which is quite pretty. So that's our So the fun things of painting with watercolours is that overlaying watercolour on top of watercolour, obviously the wetter it is, the more it's going to push your pigment out of the way from where it wants to claim. So if you can imagine it a bit like a bossy cat, if you push that cat away within 2 seconds, it will have come back. And you're not going to win. Ever. I'm afraid that's just never going to happen. Now, one of the interesting things about this with the light is that when you are stood in front of a reflection in water, you tend to find that the area of highest reflection that you see tends to be in the mid-distance to you. So the highest point of reflection along here will be along this middle section here, and halfway down to here, and actually you won't get this high bright reflection all the way down. As it comes closer to your feet, you actually lose some of that reflection. And bear in mind, this is light reflecting on water, and it's how much your eye sees. So you end up with this. Now, we'll stood seeing this at an angle, so as usual, you put enough paint on. So actually, the way the reflection came, it came down this way and kind of tapered off more that way than this way. So we end up with a bit more shadow over here. This was probably because there was a fair number of trees behind, just like a couple of large bushes. They weren't really trees, they were large bushes at the end of the day. And they were, I kind of think they were adding shadow to this side, so of course you end up losing some of what you're doing. Now, for our lightest areas, I'm going to do something a bit different. You don't have to try and necessarily put a paler version of the colour you're using in order to make your tonal map. So in this case, I'm going to use a very pale version of the burnt sienna. I'm adding a little bit of the cadmium red, just give it a slight orange tint, because actually this is quite it was quite a sunny, warm day, and you tend to lose that when you're working on paintings like this, especially working with water. Obviously, you're working with blues, which, you know, they're cool. They're a cool colour. So we're just going to add some of this mix in here, just to kind of give this a bit of warmth. Not much, because it is our lightest value at the end of the day. And bear in mind, this is also reflected in the water, so it also has to go down. The problems of using a flat plate is they're all trying to mix on the palette, which means getting some rather interesting greens, more than my yellows, which is great, but at the same time it's a pain in the butt. Working this in. Doesn't matter if you go over the top, the areas you've done before, makes absolutely no difference. Just try not to scrub it, because if you scrub it, it will start to mix, and you'll see what have happened here, where I've picked up the blue slightly. Doesn't matter too much, to be honest. It's just the way this colour works sometimes. Right, so now we have just a light tonal map. This is going to help us keep our colours so that we don't lose our values as we're working. And there's a bit of a mess in the corner. Love making a mess. Right. Okay, there we go. This is our tonal value. We have some of this reflection in, which is here. So I'm just going to add some of that in. Don't mind the dog. We've got a co-op opposite. And I've got the window open, because actually it wasn't supposed to be warm, but as per usual with Scottish weather, never stays the way it's supposed to. Right, hopefully you can see there what I've done. We now have our tonal map. So we have a dark value, it's more of a mid-dark, and that's our closest set of trees, which are borderline in our top third. We've got our most further distance trees, these are darker. And then as we come forward, we've got a larger amount of our mid-tone, which is from here to here. And then obviously we've got a larger amount of our lightest tone as we come forward. Now bear in mind, the rule of thumb is that the darkest needs to be in the forefront, in the case of this, we have a lot of reflection, so we will get a lot more of our light tones at the front, but they will be coupled with our darkest as well, and you'll see that as we work on it. Right, we are now going to start with our darkest values. In this case, it is a dark navy blue, which I'm going to use. This is one of my Senlio pastels, soft pastels, so it's quite soft, so ideally you need quite a light touch so you don't end up putting too much of it down on the paper. So we're going to start with our biggest sections and our darkest areas. So obviously we've got a fair bit of dark going on up here. Mid-level trees. So just fill that in. Okay, and obviously these trees that have really far distance are also darkish. Not as dark as these ones, because these ones are closer, but they still have quite a dark value. And then obviously we've got the dark bits from the river, so we'll work on that. So what I'm doing is I'm just literally touching it to the paper and just dragging it down. Create these little marks, so you can see where it's going. You don't want anything too uniform. Obviously, the more uniform you make it, the worse it's going to look, because then it won't look organic. You'll end up with it looking very almost like a computer program. I also want to drag this down into the water a little bit, because obviously that's where the reflections are going to be. Might help that it's bouncing quite. My board's backboard's bouncing quite a bit on this stand. For any of you, or those of you that are following me on Patreon, my first goal from subscribers is to replace my easel here. So please help me out on that one, because this one causes no end of problems, as you can see. I'm just going to drag this down a bit. Just touch and pull. Just touch and pull down. So I want this quite dark, because this is where it is darkest the most. Blue in this, you know, it's so dark it does look very much like it's black. It's not, it is blue. Also, there's some shadow going on these trees. I'm just going to give this a touch of dark so you can see where that lies. And we've also got a little bit of this darkness down here. And also in this corner, just a touch, not much. Right, so that is our darkest value. Now, one of the things with pastels is putting down your lights pretty early on, and the reason for that is because you don't want to be making mud. The more you layer the pastels, the more muddier it's going to be as they start to combine and you start to lose your colour, especially also your saturation, and whites are pretty terrible for us. So the next colour I'm going to lay down is going to be not quite my lightest, but my second nearest lightest, which is actually the blue, one of the blues from the sky, and I can pull that down from the sky and also into the water, and that will also give me a clear run and show me exactly where I'm going with all the various different areas in the painting. If you're wondering what it is I'm waving around, it is a old tea towel, as you can see. I use it to clean the pastels as I work. As you can see here, blue was, just rub it on, it takes any previous colour it's picked up off. Also for wiping my hands, you can see already, blue fingers. Right, so the colour I am going for on this is really quite a toned down blue. In fact, I'm almost tempted to make it a violet. Should I make it violet? Let's make it a violet. The violet I am using here, I hoped I had a smaller piece of it. I don't think I actually have a smaller piece of it on the table. I have a box of my dividers which has got most of my pastels in, but on my desk next to the painting here, I just have a small base from a plant pot and a selection of colours which I'll be using on this painting. So it's just to keep the number of options down. The more colours you have to use in front of you, the more that you will use too many colours in a painting. It's nice to keep a balance, limit your palette, and you will produce a better painting. So this is a very pale violet. This is a unison, so it's another soft one. I have a lot of soft pastels. I have a lot of hard pastels. I have a lot of soft pastels too. This is actually, if you've seen my video recently on tonal values, this is actually one of the pastels that was in that video. So you'll know from that video that this is actually a light to mid tone value pastel. So it's not the lightest in value, but it is a mid tone one. So we're going to add this to the sky. I will also probably be putting in some pale yellows as some of my lighter tonal values into the sky, because I do want to keep it warm, and that will be picked up again in the water, so you'll see that. And actually it's a nice, quite a nice complementary colour to the violet. So I'm just lightly layering that on where I want it. Okay, into the trees. Right, and now where I want this for the river. See where we go off? There is this line here. Just see it as I bring this in. This is the water line in the distance. That's what we're aiming towards. Just bring it down and just lightly add it to where we've got the water. Not much, just want a touch. See where it's picking up the blues and it's blending. Down. Now try to keep your strokes, your pastel, in the direction that you want the water to go, and certainly in the direction of the reflections. So in this case I am pulling it down towards the bottom of this paper, and it's just on a slight diagonal towards this corner where these extra shallows are. And I throw my pastel on the floor. Not the first time it's happened. Okay, so just keep pulling it down. Now you do want it to go slightly over some of this. But as you pick up the darker colour that we put down for the reflections, you're pulling it down. As you pull it down, it is blending. And because of that, you end up with this lovely effect. There we go. That's our two base colours down, our mid to lightest tone and our darkest tone, and this gives us a beautiful base then to work on and get down the rest of our middle and light tones, and then punch it back up with a little bit more touches here and there of some darker tones. Right, so now what we're going to focus on is the section up here, which is our sky, and being water, it obviously reflects the sky, so what we'll see in the sky up here, we'll also see down here in the water. Now, a lot of skies you can see, it is darker at the top and lighter at the bottom because of the shape of the earth, and you'll see that reflected in the water, but obviously the other way up, so where it will be dark up here, it would be darker at the bottom here, and as it comes down to lighter to here, it would come down to lighter to here. Sometimes it can be confusing, but this, this is what happens with the reflection in the sky. It is almost like a kind of, if you'd taken a mirror and placed it here, you would see it in the opposite way. So our dark, we're going to go for our darkers up here, and we are going to go and stick with our violets, and then we're going to move down towards our pinkier tones. This photo was taken during the day, but I want to give it more of an evening kind of a feel and approach to it, because I think that it just would give it a better feel. So we're going to apply some more of our darker up here. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed when you're working on skies and things, it also tends to be on a diagonal. So you tend to find that it's more darker in a corner and comes this way. There's probably some sort of scientific terminology for it, but for us, we're not going to be doing that here because we want to go for more of a kind of romantic feel anyway. And obviously we want to reflect that, what we've done at the top here, down to the bottom. Now, I'm not pressing too heavy because these are quite soft pastels. That one is a unison, so it's pretty soft, and the tooth of the pastel is quite fine, the paper, so it does tend to pick up a lot. Now I'm going to go in with a bit of a weirder colour. This is which one should we go for? This is a kind of peachy pink. Just going to give it a quick, so this is what I'm going for. So if you're looking at this in values, obviously our violet is a medium value at the top of the sky, and we'll be working down to our lightest value to the top of the mountains. Excuse me 1 sec, I've just spotted the kittens got onto the worktop in the kitchen. Get down. I'm back. Yes, she managed to get herself into an empty, face first into an empty can. Yeah, it's you I'm looking at. I can see you from here. I can see all the way down the corridor from where I am in my studio to the kitchen. She's now looking at me like, but Mum, you've taken the can away that tastes nice. Tough. Right, so we're going to go in with this nice peachy colour and just overlay that on. I tend to use the side of my pastels for most of my work, just because you tend to be able to make nicer marks with it. And as you can see there, I picked up the edge of the dark, so I have used my good old trusty tea towel, multicolored tea towel, and I'll just wipe that off, blow away some of this dust, and just come in ever so carefully and just occasionally keep wiping down As you can see as I'm picking it up, I'm picking up some of this. The dark navy blue, so try not to do that. Also, you don't want to try it and stop and have this edge, because otherwise you end up with these square edges where your pink melts into the violet at the top, and then it looks just a tad forced. So as we come down, I'm just going to lightly touch down to here, just edge around the trees. There we go. Right, now we're going to do the same but in the opposite with our water down here. Now, try not to scrub the pastel up and down, because obviously we'll end up touching. And as you can see, whenever you touch, it then drags it in. So try to keep your strokes just going up the way. Now, I'm going to take some of this further up the stream, just in little bits. In fact, I may well break this pastel and how to do this, because this pastel's a bit long. You can see it's about almost as long as my thumb, and actually for great big pieces like this it's perfect, but as soon as you start getting into little detail areas, it becomes a bit of a pain in the butt, because you end up putting it in places you don't want. So I'm just going to break that in half. So now it's this big, so about half the size, because I want to be able to touch up some of this, just little bits here, where we're catching some of this light and the water going up. Now remember, this is not our lightest colour. But we do want to include some of this in with our rest of the stream. As it goes further from us, I'll probably include more of this than I will of our lightest lights. You'll see why as we develop the stream, that as you go along, we move further away, the actual light reduces in the reflection. So you get this, the darkest from your skies going into your mid-range, and then around about here you get your brightest bits, which will be your reflection from this part. But then as you come out of that, we actually then end up going into shadow, and you just see little glimpses every now and then. So I'm just going to add some of that there. Push this up into the reeds. There we go. Just going to add a bit more of the violet in some of the stream sections. Remember, it's easy to go over your lights with your darks, but it is not easy to go the other way. So the last thing you want to do is end up unable to bring your lights back. Realistically, your only way to do that at that point would be to scrub it off and start again. I mean, you can use fixative, is another one. A lot of people will bring in some fixative to go over the top to allow them to put some highlights back in. I don't tend to do that, mostly because fixative will darken what you're doing, and often than not that then has the actual reverse effect of what you're trying to achieve. Because of course you're trying to put it in to put the highlights in, and you're actually making the rest of your pastel work darker, which will not do you any favours at all. Right, so as you can see from there, we've now got our our mids and our darkest tones for our sky in. Now bear in this is not the darkest tones on the paper, this is just our darkest and mids on our sky and the water. Now we're going to go in with our lightest. Now I've got two choices. I can either go in with a very pale, very creamy yellow, or I can go in with a very pale violet. Now the pale violet is a bit of a colder, so here's the two colours I'm using. So that's the pale violet and that's the pale yellow. So you can see the difference between the two. One is considerably warmer than the other. This one is still warm. I have much colder blue violets in pale form than this one. This is a warmer one, but this is still warmer in tone than that one. So the question is, do we go yellow or do we go violet? Well, the best way to find out is to actually have a look and see. So this is our pale violet and that is our pale yellow. Now, I've put a lot of cool tones into this painting already, so actually I'm thinking I'm probably stick to the cooler side. I mean, I am in Scotland, it's not that warm, so what I'm going to do is just rub some of that out slightly, so I can go over it easier. There we go. We're going to use the pale violet. We're just going to bring it down to the mountains. And there's our lightest value coming in at the bottom, just before the hills. Now this will help make our mountains in the background stand out, because obviously they are quite a light value because they are the furthest thing in the distance that isn't sky, but they will be darker than this. Me being bad, I keep picking up the trees. Just clean my pastel. I'm just literally touching the surface and dragging it down. So nothing really too exciting. Apart from my bouncy board. It's actually quite fun working on a board that bounces. You get a lot of, let's just say, incidental marks. And in some respects, it's almost more organic being able to do that. So, that's now our lightest through to our darkest at the top. And now we're going to apply the same to our stream. So we're going to start here, which is where our lightest is. And we're just going to pull this down. And come in here. And I'm not going to take this to the edges because it tends to highlight more the middle section of the water. You'll see that. Right here as well, where it's, because it's just about to do the turn on this corner, you get this highlighted section before it then goes into, picks up your mids and your darkers, and then the same on the edge, and it's on the edge closest to you, and then the back edge is more in shadow, so that's where your darker colours are in your stream. So we're just going to add that in there. Not too much, but enough just to say, yep, that's where we are. That's where we're hiding. Little bits of it here and there as we go further up, and then as it bends back around here, it does just catch the light again. And like that. So that is our sky and our water done. So now we will start tackling the base elements for our grass and grounds. We'll also put in our mountains and get the base levels down for our trees, where we'll start to bring out the colours that we want to see in our trees and our grasslands. Right, slight blip with the camera when I went off to sort out the kitten again. It stopped recording, I hadn't realised, so just to catch up what I've done, as I said, I'm working on the mid section at the moment. What I've been using is a kind of mid-tone, a slightly darker to mid-tone grey, just to put in a nice undercoat. It's a warmer grey, so it has a little bit of yellow in it, just to kind of bring out a slightly warmer tone on the ground. I'm now going to put in my colours for the mountains. I'm probably going to go for, let's see, I'd quite like something a little bit more, not like that. Now, most of you know, or should know, your cooler colours tend to be in the background and your warmer colours tend to be in your foreground. So this, would you believe it, is actually a neutral dark violet. And I'll show you the other one. You can just see the difference between the two. So this one here is my neutral, it's my grey violet, and is darker in value to this one, which is a slightly less neutral violet. So when you see them together, you can see the difference quite clearly. So we'll be using this one, the lighter one, for our mountains, and this one, we may add some of this one in later to our trees. We'll have a look. So we'll put some of this down for the mountains. Right, I'm going to lighten that up slightly by adding some of our violet from earlier. We should probably use a mid-tone violet. So this is one of my mid-tones, so you can see, compared to what I was using earlier, and that one's the top of the sky, but that's a mid-tone. I'm just going to come in over the top, just add a little bit more colour. There's nothing wrong with colour, you just have to use it in the right tonal values. Just edging this mountain slightly, I want it a bit more, well, people kind of think of mountains and they think craggy things, quite rocky, you know, they can stick out and have jagged shapes, and actually quite a lot of the mountains in Scotland are not like that at all. They are very much the opposite. There is some very craggy mountains in the Cairngorms, in the national park there, but not many. Most of the mountains, and the one closest to me here would be Benverachy, which is in just outside of Pitlochry, and that, if you can see it from quite a distance. Where I am in Dunkeld, we're at the tip end of a valley, and halfway along the valley splits into two valleys. One goes off towards Aberfeldy and into the Cairngorms, and the other valley goes off towards Benverachy, Pitlochry, and you can take the main road up that way and go straight up to Inverness from there. And as you're coming into the valley, you can see Benverachy for quite a distance, and actually it's very much like this in shape. It's very round. And it's not until you're considerably closer that actually you see that the back end, so for example like this, that bit there actually would be another part of the same mountain, and there'd be a dip between the two, and there'd be quite a considerable dip, possibly even a gorge or a gully but you never actually see that in the distance. And most of the mountains around, certainly the lower end of the Highlands, are actually kind of very gentle, look more like giant hills. And as we are considerably high up from sea level already, they almost do look like hills because you're already high up. They are mountains though, honest. Right, what I am going to do is I'm going to blend some of this in. I'm going to see where I put. I have some blending. See what I've done with some of my foam. Those things, just chuck it down and then work with it. That normal thing. Stuff it. Do it the classic way. Right. So we're just going to blend in our mountains. So yeah, we want this. The reason for doing this is that you also help take some of the pastel off the page, and that will actually mean that you can lay more pastel down. So if you're not happy with it, then you can change it. You can change its colour. I'm gonna soften my edge slightly. Right, and we're going to go into these trees here. We will be making this tree line here lighter. So for now, it's not going to matter too much what we're doing with it. I wouldn't always recommend using your fingers to blend. Pastel paper is quite rough. It really annoys me that I can't find my phone that I use. Let's have a look. Hello people! I have a drawer of art things. Also seems to have the kitten's twine. Ah, there's one. So this is Foamex. You can buy it in small blocks. You can see it's a couple, not very thick, but a lot easier on your fingers. So now we're going to scrub this in. You can actually see, as I scrub this in, how much more blue this darker shade is that I've got on the trees. As with everything. I'm just doing it in a little circular motion just because it scrubs it into the tooth of paper better. Yeah, I do blow it occasionally, just get the dust off. It does build up very, very quickly, the dust. Take some of that off, and just keep going. Okay, just the last little section to go. Just come down here. So that's our main mid-darks and darks now scrubbed in, and now you can see clearly where we're going and what we've got so far. So you can see our lights, you can see our lightest mids, you can now see our darkest mids and our darkest darks. Just stopping for a drink, it's quite hot today. as much as I'd love to open the window, I invite every wasp in under the sun. Right. What I like to do is take some of this back out where I want to keep. I often do this with my towel. Scrub out sections just to bring it a little bit lighter. See, same here. And just because it is a band lighter here, not drop that in. Right, now let me scrub that in a bit more. You can kind of see that we have it darker, going through to light here, and our darks again. So let's reinforce where we're going with some of these. So we're back to this, which is almost impossible to see. If I hold it closer to the side light, you can just about see that it's a dark blue. So bring that down. And what we also want to do is we want to reinforce our sections of our river, which will be, when we're done, what you'll tend to see is you'll actually see that most of this you won't, well you will see, but it will be through the reeds. And I think it's important to understand that obviously the majority of this is all about layering. You really do have to layer this in order to get the effect, especially with the reeds. It's very, very important. So we're just bringing that in. And along. So this is the darkest, we're now making these the darkest sections, which is behind the reeds. So you'll see some of the darks through the reeds. Just going to bring this down. And so what I want to do is start to give it a little bit of shape as well. So we're not just making random marks, but you can actually see, and you can see it as well, it almost looks like there's like some of the darkest shadows actually look themselves like long grasses, when actually the majority of it is, it's just the shadows being casted by other grasses, but you can't really see that just because of the way it works. So these are our foregroundmost grasses here, and then we've got the ones on the other side, which we're going to do. There is a lot of grasses in this, but you're not going to want to be painting them all. It's just, that would be ridiculously time consuming and not beneficial to anyone, unfortunately. So what you want to do is kind of make marks that look a bit like the grasses, and they'll do the job for you. I tend to find that people's imagination and their own eyes will actually fill in the gaps of what you're actually working on and what they're looking at, which means you don't always need to have to do every single little blade of grass. So now we're going to start working on our our heavy and mid tones. So this will be mostly our the bases for the grasses. So not just our darks, but our greens, our neutral greens, and then also some of the other colours that we'll be bringing into that as well to give it a bit more life. So possibly, you know, we want to bring some of this violet down, so we'll have some violets, and we'll also have some turquoise, possibly even a little bit of the pinks as well that we put in the sky. Right, so let's look at our nice mid-tones. Now, as I said earlier, I want to get some of these colours we've got in the sky, but I also want to add in some colours which are from the same value, so our same tonal value, so our same mid-range, but also are almost complementary colours. Now, we've got a lot of purples on here, and obviously the complementary colour to purple is orange, so we'll try and bring in some oranges. We're also going to bring in some turquoise blues, because turquoise blues then are, again, another complementary colour. So for this, we're just going to bring in very nice bright orange and a lovely turquoise. So we're going to start with our turquoise, and we're going to add some of this to our background, our furthest grasses. And we're just going to layer this bit on. I'm using a kind of a lightish minty turquoise. Just to keep it cool and help kind of give it a bit of an accent as well. I mean, you don't want paintings to be boring. You want to be able to bring in beautiful colours. You want to be able to create these beautiful effects, and that would be really hard to do. So we're now going for a slightly darker turquoise. And just bring that in here. Bear in mind, we are only simulating grasses by sort of marks we're making. We are not trying to recreate grass, otherwise we will be here forever. So we're going to bring some of this here. Just see glimpses of the river. Well, it's not even really a river, it's more just a kind of watercourse as it goes off into the distance. And what we also want to do is add some of our purple in as well. But this will be close to the foreground, so I'm going for this, which is a slightly more redder tone to it, but the advantage is that it will keep it nice and warm, which is kind of what we want. We don't really want to be heading too cold down here. There's some bits and pieces which are just kind of sticking out over here, so I'll just add. There's a lot of trees and stuff kind of overhanging. So I'm going to add that in. I'll probably bring in a slightly darker purple as well. Have a look at what we're doing with that. You don't want to bring it down to the edge, because the edge closest to the water is actually where you'll find it's darkest. So you don't want to come too far down, but we do want to make sure it's definitely present and visible. So, and it kind of goes off. This kind of tone goes off this way. Like I said, there's quite a few swaves of this going on. So just want to make sure that we get that in, and also further up as well. But you'll see this a lot more. It's a lot more prevalent. You see a lot more of this purple tone here. As we kind of head further up, you also see some down there as well. You want to take, you don't want to do that into the water. So here, darken again. And then as we get into the greens, you'll see some of it in this green as well, up here. This is our purple. And we will be adding probably some of this to our trees as well, and where it picks up the light. So we put some light in now, I've got it out. Just little bits here and there. Not much. It doesn't need much, but when you've got this part of the tree, it tends to be catching the light, the bits at the top and the bits that kind of come to the side. So some of them end up picking up more colour than others. See that we've got this like that. It's pretty. I want some of this purple to come across as well. So you see, we're starting to get this lovely layered effect. We've got the different colours all now starting to show through, which is great. We really want to add some more of this beautiful green a bit further down. Where do we want to go with it? I'll bring the bouncy screen. See a lot more of this bright colour on this side, because this is the side that's going to be the lightest, because we've got the sun. Although we've got the sun up here, you can see by the angle we've got this light, and it does tend to play out like that. It does tend to come more across here. So this side, because of the trees as well, will be darker. Not significantly so, but enough that you will notice it. Right, what I want to do is to get in some of this orange as well. Now don't panic with these colours, because you will see they do blend, and you will see them blend more. Caught it there. As we go along, remember that a pastel really is all about layering it anyway, so any problem with these. This is what is this again? I actually can't remember where I got the square sticks. They're quite hard. They're like new pastels, they're quite hard. This is square, so they don't tend to go on quite as easily as a round pastel. So you do have to tend to work at them a little bit more. And I'm not quite happy with this shape here. I'm just gonna use my darkest dark to kind of play with this a bit more. Maybe bring it out a bit more here. also here. There we go. Just gives it a bit more shape. Because one of the things you don't want is obviously to lose our shapes. Okay. Right, so let's bring in some more of our neutral colours. Yeah, and these will be some greens before I actually bring in some of our better ones. Just because the marsh grasses are green, surprisingly now. I'm just doing tiny little marks. Try and get this in. Now this is a darker mid-tone, but it's also a really nice warm colour. And it will help bring the warmth through. Start to see some of the shapes that we're kind of working towards here. And we'll just finish putting in some of these and then touch it up. We're going to touch it up with a very, very pale colour, and you'll notice the difference as soon as I do it. And it's just to bring some of this highlight back in. And then once that's done, you can pretty much sign it off, and then that will be it. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. I really hope you've had fun. Certainly give this one a go. You'll have a lot of fun with this. Yeah. Post your efforts on my Patreon page. I'd love to see them. And keep on painting, people. Done.